For the first time in Vienna, stopped trams to block the Ukrainian rally. In the United Nations General Assembly hall, a court was held by the Russian Turetsky Corps. The church often serves as an instrument of legitimizing power. While Berlin cancelled its May 9 parade and banned Soviet symbols, Vienna went full steam ahead. A doctored video claiming that French President Emmanuel Macron, during his visit to Kiev, was hiding drugs. Welcome. This is Atmo Media, where truth, analysis and independent journalism come together to bring you what truly matters. Atmo Media is more than just media. It's the voice of Ukrainians in Europe and platform for truth, honest journalism and objective information. We work to ensure that Ukrainians in Austria and across Europe stay connected with their homeland and remain informed about events in and beyond Ukraine. And we are just getting started. Russian propaganda tours continue. The night wolves have headed to Berlin, despite sanctions and protests. The night wolves are a pro-Russian motorcycle club, known for their support of Vladimir Putin. In 2014, they took part in annexation of Crimea, showing loyalty to the Kremlin. In 2005, their motorcycle tour started from eastern Slovakia, passing through Swidnik and Duka Pass. In Bratislava, they visited the Slavian Memorial, where they were met by both supporters and protesters, with Ukrainian flags and banner reading "Russia is a terrorist state." In Prague, the bikers visited the Olsanik Cemetery, where they were met by demonstrators opposing Russian aggression. One of the bikers raised a Russian flag and declared he had brought an eternal flame from Sevastopol. Due to sanctions, many of Russian participants were unable to enter the Europe. In Slovakia and Czech Republic, the riot included mostly local supporters of the club. The Czech court has even dissolved the local chapter of the Night Wolves. The final stop of the road is Trepov Park in Berlin, home to the largest Soviet war memorial. The bikers held an event there on May 9 and are also planning to visit Vienna. This motorcycle rally sparks mixed reactions in Europe. The Night Wolves' trip to Berlin is not just a commemorative act, it's a political gesture that causes outrage in Europe aimed at Russia's ongoing aggression against Ukraine. This riot once again shows how symbols of war and propaganda try to infiltrate the heart of Europe under the guise of honoring memory. In the heart of New York, in the United Nations General Assembly hall, a court was held by the Russian Turetsky Corps. But it wasn't just a performance. On May 5, the Russian male choir and female group Soprano gave a concert marking the 80th anniversary of the end of the World War II. The program included Soviet-era songs like Katyusha, Smuglanka, Cranes, Dark Nights, Buchenwald Alarm, Victory Day, and even the Russian national anthem.
Приятного вечера, наслаждайтесь концертом, с Днем Победы.
Кумир Китайской Народной Республики Юго-Восточной Азии.
The organizer, the Russian Federation's permanent mission to the United Nations, the audience over 1,800 attendees. The Ukrainian delegation at the United Nations was outraged, calling the concert "Dancing on the Graves," charged the affairs Kristina Hayvoshin stated that Russia is using the international platform for propaganda and trying to justify its aggression while distorting the memory of World War II. When the Russian anthem played, some attendees stood up. No mention of the war in Ukraine, only Soviet nostalgia. This sparked a wave of criticism online in diplomatic circles. The New York concert became yet another example of how Russia attempts to rewrite history, doing so on the international stage, even inside the United Nations Hall. On May 8, in Vienna, at the very heart of United Nations, a concert took place that stirred strong reactions in the international community, and for good reason. In the rotunda of the United Nations Center, a cultural and memorial event marked the anniversary of the end of the World War II. Organizer, the Russian Art and Literature Club of the Vienna International Center. The program featured folk ensembles from Austria and Czech Republic, including Russian Soul, Kalinka and Vltava Kazakhs. The event drew criticism from diplomats and activists alike, aimed Russia's war against Ukraine. Many see such concerts as an attempt to legitimize Russian cultural presence on international platforms. It wasn't the music that was criticized, it was the context. Who was performing and why? Diplomats emphasized culture is soft power, and the United Nations should not become a tool for propaganda by a state waging war. The performers, Russian and pro-Russian groups, raised questions. Was there about memory or a political gesture? Berlin cancels May 9 parades. This year, the German capital cancelled its traditional mass events on May 8 and 9. Instead of parades, only Rather Lane and Minute of Silence to honor World War II victims and protest the politicization of history. Police banned Soviet and Russian symbols, including flags, St. George ribbons and letter Z. The court confirmed, under current conditions, such symbols represent support for the war against Ukraine. While Berlin cancelled its May 9 parade and banned Soviet symbols, Vienna went full steam ahead. Even though our team asked Austrian police to restrict pro-Russian demonstrations, out of respect for Ukrainians and European democracy, the police ignored our request. A large rally took place in Austria capital, with Soviet flags, St. George ribbons and wartime songs. Participants of the march carried Soviet flags, portraits of Stalin and other symbols associated with the Soviets' victory on World War II. A concert was held featuring songs from the war years, such as Katyusha, Three Tankists. The pro-Russian groups also played positive songs about love, mothers, friendship and peace, classic tunes to cover up their own crimes and those of the country they came from, Moscow. And of course there were banners with the words, "Thanks to Grandpa for the victory." Ukrainians also came out for a protest against this lawlessness. Despite Austria's neutrality, the police blocked Ukrainian protesters like never before. This was a disgrace to the Austrian law enforcement system. As per an agreement with the Austrian police, 3 Ukrainian rallies were organized. Specifically, loudspeakers and banners were allowed. However, the police obstructed these efforts. They were looking for any opportunity to stop the procession. Police blocked banners with the words "Russia is terrorist state" and turned off the speakers. It even went so far as to, for the first time in Vienna, stop trams to block the Ukrainian rally. According to eyewitnesses, including one of our colleagues, the security was aggressively hostile toward the Ukrainian demonstrators. Some of the police even spoke Russian. For instance, a peaceful protester with a disability who was shouting "Russia terrorist" was approached by security who asked her in Russian to shut her mouth, invoking God, saying God commanded it, and even tried to have the police arrested her. One of the officers in Russian said, "Let her go." Agree, this is a very strange situation that Austrian special services need to look into. The organizers hide behind anti-fascism, but for the Ukrainian community this is a disrespect to the victims of the current war. Austrians were very displeased with the disgrace. Some said that they were ashamed and could not understand how such a thing could happen. Apart from Berlin and Vienna, events took place across Europe from May 8 to 10 as a powerful response to Russian propaganda. In dozens of cities, Ukrainians and Europeans united to prevent the Kremlin from distorting history, devaluing the memory of World War II, and imposing false messages through victory symbols. The Baltic states, clear positions and bans. Latvia, Lithuania and Estonia are among the most consistent in Europe in resisting Russian propaganda. In Latvia, particularly in Riga, the local authorities banned mass gatherings on May 9, and Soviet symbols were officially equated with totalitarianism. The police arrested several participants of the Immortal Regiment for violating the law. In Lithuania, in Vilnius, instead of May 9 celebrations, there was an exhibition titled Russian Militarism, a Threat to Peace. Participants brought photos of fallen Ukrainians and posters reading, "We remember, we will not let it happen again." In Estonia, particularly in Tallinn, a silent march took place with the Ukrainian and Estonian flags. Authorities warned citizens not to fall for provocations. Russian activists attempting to organize symbolic flower laying at Soviet monuments were officially denied and warned about the consequences. All three Baltic countries emphasize the memory of World War II is not a tool for hybrid warfare, but a lesson that should protect the future from the past repeating itself. These days become not only a commemoration of the past, but also a demonstration that memory is also a front, and Europe has already learned to see it in the red flag, not only history, but also a modern threat. Czech Republic. In Prague on May 9, activists organized an event called Never Again, It's Now, where historians, eyewitnesses and diplomats spoke. Right under the Soviet monument, they displayed photographs of Ukrainian cities destroyed by the war, Bucha, Izum and Mariupol. People chanted, "Russia, the occupier," and emphasized, "You cannot compare the liberation of Europe from Nazis with Russia's current aggression." Friends, on the days of remembrance, Russia attempted to spread one of the most brutal fake news stories. A doctored video claiming that French President Emmanuel Macron, during his visit to Kiev, was hiding drugs. The French government quickly debunked the video, calling it an information attack aimed at undermining solidarity with Ukraine. The French Ministry of Defense warned that such attempts would be regarded as informational sabotage. Poland. On May 10, the Polish authorities reported the uncovering of a network of individuals spreading pro-Kremlin narratives on social media. These agents, among bloggers and so-called experts, attempted to influence public opinion ahead of the European Parliament elections. Among the phrases they spread were "Europe is tired of the war" and "Ukraine must compromise." However, public reaction showed that Poles still remember the history of Soviet occupation. While Russia tries to impose its old imperial narrative on the world, Ukrainians and their allies across Europe say, "We know the truth and we won't let it be distorted." Russia systematically uses disinformation and sabotage as tools of hybrid warfare against Europe. The arson of the shopping center in Warsaw, which is attributed to Russian intelligence service, is an example of physical sabotage aimed at destabilizing countries that support Ukraine. At the same time, information attacks such as the fake accusations against the leaders of France, Germany and the UK of drug use during their visit to Kyiv aim to discredit the Kremlin's political opponents and sow distrust among European citizens. These actions are part of Russia's broader strategy to weaken European unity and support for Ukraine. By spreading false information and committing acts of sabotage, the Kremlin seeks to distract from its own aggression and create chaos in countries opposing its policies. It's crucial for European countries to remain vigilant and united in countering these threats, defending democratic values and upholding the truth in the face of disinformation. A bit of historical analysis. Why is this war happening today? Why did Russia attack Ukraine? There is a certain historical, national and physiological explanation for this. The difference between the mentality of Ukrainians and Russians has deeply historical, cultural and physiological roots. These differences have been shaped over centuries by various civilizational models, religious traditions, social structures and political regimes. Worldview and attitude toward authority. Ukrainians. Historically inclined toward democratic forms of self-governance. The traditions of Cossacks, councils, village communities and Maidan protests show a desire for participation in governance and distrust of centralized power. Russians tend to sacralize power. Historically, they accept authoritarian regimes, where their rulers is perceived as a father of nation. This results in less readiness for protests and greater tolerance for restrictions of freedom. Individualism versus collectivism. Ukrainians value personal freedom and individuality, even in public structures. Respect for personal opinion and initiative is maintained. Russians. Collectivism is the dominant value. Individual interests are often subordinated to state or collective goals. Religion and spirituality. Ukrainians. Religion is more personal and internal. There has been a historical coexistence of Christian traditions with pre-Christian rites. Russians. Orthodoxy is closely tied to the state. The church often serves as an instrument of legitimizing power, and religiosity has an official ceremonial character. Attitude toward women. Ukrainians. Traditionally, women hold a high status in society. In folklore and rituals, women are celebrated as the guardians of the family and community. Russians. Patriarchal traditions dominate. Women are often viewed as a subordinate to men, which is reflected in linguistic structures, such as getting married to her. Humor and folklore. Ukrainians. Humor is full of self-irony and wit. Folk tales and songs often have a moral undertone, where the hero wins through intelligence and cleverness. Russians. Humor can be harshed, with elements of satire. In fairy tales, heroes are often passive, waiting for a miracle or intervention from higher powers. Civilization orientations. Ukrainians. Oriented toward European values, such as freedom, human rights and democracy. Russians tend toward isolationism and the idea of special powers, which is reflected in anti-Western rhetoric and desire to self-sufficiency. Now you see, mentality is not just a set of traits, but a deep system of values that defines how we live, love, protest and even joke. Ukrainians are people of freedom, dignity and self-respect. The Russian model is about power over the individual. And it is in these profound differences that the answer lies to why we are so different. That's all for now. Subscribe to our channel, like the post. Take care. Glory to Ukraine.